Every football player has a built-in expiration date. Some can delay the passage of time to an extent, for sure, but the brutal nature of the sport means you can't just keep playing at a high level past a certain point. That's the metaphorical cliff that is so often brought up when a player's career stems into their late 30s or even early 40s. It's just how the human body works. But when you're having those discussions, it's always about players at the very end of a long road, 10, 15, 20 years of great football behind them. It's not often that age is a discussion at the beginning of an NFL career, the complete opposite of the spectrum. There's of course a handful of exceptions, like the Browns setting a record by drafting Brandon Weeden in the first round at 28, making him the oldest player ever drafted in round 1, but as a general rule, if you're not Cleveland, you don't want your starting rookie quarterback to be pushing 30. But even then, there's still exceptions to those exceptions, because this is the NFL after all, a league where Hugh Jackson can go 1-31 over 2 seasons and still be asked to return for a third.
I'm not going 1-15. No. Well, I'll be swimming in the lake over there somewhere.
So, today we're going to discuss the tale of Dieter Brock, a quarterback who played 1 season and 1 season alone for the Los Angeles Rams as a 34-year-old rookie. And though the term rookie is a little generous, we're going to get to that in a moment. But before we can discuss some vintage LA Rams history, I would like to give a huge thank you to Manscaped for sponsoring this video. For the uninitiated out there, Manscaped provides the best men's grooming tools on the market, and they continue to raise their standards with upgrades like the latest Lawnmower 3.0 trimmer, which is fully kitted out with a 7,000 RPM motor, a battery that lasts up to 90 minutes on a single charge, and even an LED light to help you venture through the weeds. This and much more is included in the also improved Perfect Package 3.0, which equips you with an assortment of products to keep you and yours at its absolute freshest. So if you're interested, head on down to the link below and use my code SET20 to get 20% off your order, and in addition, not only the Shed travel bag, but also a pair of premium boxer briefs on the house, not to mention free shipping on all of it. Manscaped has been one of the biggest supporters of this channel, so go make sure to support them as well, since they are directly helping to make my content happen. Again, that is code SET20 at the link in the description to start upgrading your grooming routine. So thank you again to Manscaped, and ignoring the fact that I know absolutely nothing about art, let's paint a picture. The 1984 Rams were a football team that had an identity, and that identity's name was Eric Dickerson. Never before had a running back found such incredible success straight out of the gate, setting a rookie rushing record in 1983 that still stands today, and then following it up the very next season by setting the all-time single-season rushing record with 2,105 yards, a mark that again still stands today. So as a general rule, if Dickerson was finding success on the ground, so were the Rams. Headed into the 1985 campaign, the team was ready to take another shot at the playoffs on Eric Dickerson's back. They boasted a strong defense, and the previous season, their new quarterback Jeff Kemp took over and went 9-4 as a starter midway through the year, even leading the team to the postseason. However, what you've got to understand about the Rams is that they had serious commitment issues, having been known to bounce from quarterback to quarterback, unable to string together 2 full seasons with the same one since 1973. And keep in mind, this is 1985 we're talking about. So, in 80s Rams fashion, the job was still on the table. And this is where Dieter Brock enters, an excellent name that no one in the NFL had ever heard before, who traveled down to sunny Los Angeles from not-so-sunny Winnipeg, Canada, for a quarterback workout. So here's where the rookie caveat comes in, since Brock was already pretty much a CFL legend by the time he decided to make a run in the States, having played for 10 years, won 2 Most Outstanding Player awards, and led the league in passing yardage for 4 seasons. In fact, during his career up in Canada, he became the leading passer in Blue Bombers history. But make no mistake about it, prowess in the CFL did not exactly translate to prowess in the NFL. No one had heard of this guy before who wanted to make a pilgrimage to California right before retiring, and much less did anybody really believe in a chance for the Rams to succeed if he was under center. Brock had an obvious advantage among rookie quarterbacks, having been a pro for years, but very few players in history have had crossover success from the CFL to the NFL, and at 34, with health concerns on the horizon, let's just say that skepticism about Brock was the baseline outlook. However, years of pro experience wasn't the only advantage Brock had. His arm strength was the stuff of legends, and had myths surrounding it that rivaled those old Fantasy Files commercials from the late 2000s. For instance, there was how he would casually work out with heavily weighted footballs, or chuck a ball 55 yards through the goalposts while on one knee just to entertain himself before practices. I mean, we're talking about stuff that's on the caliber of Uncle Rico. But no team cared about any of that stuff until they saw it live. All of a sudden, here was this 34-year-old guy gunning passes from 70 yards away like they were checkdowns. So for a team that had ranked second to last in passing yardage the year prior, LA was more than enthusiastic to place a human cannon behind center, even if all his arm strength was really going to be used for was scaring defenses into backing off of the line. But a move like replacing your incumbent successful quarterback with a 34-year-old rookie newcomer from Canada isn't exactly a move that goes unnoticed. It made some serious waves. Naturally, the media began swirling like sharks around him, and even Eric Dickerson's first public comment about his new quarterback was, "He's so old." And I guess he's not necessarily incorrect. So being the oldest rookie quarterback in NFL history for a team that just made the playoffs the previous year is a great deal of pressure, but honestly, Brock took those expectations and kind of chucked them through a glass window. Despite the fact that Eric Dickerson actually held out the first 2 games of the season on a contract dispute, Dieter kept the train a-rolling all the way through out to a 7-0 start, the only player to ever do that in their first season with a team until Alex Smith did it with the Chiefs in 2013. It was definitely an interesting path, with Brock taking a lot more control in the passing game than was expected, and setting franchise rookie records for passer rating, passing yards, and touchdown passes at the time, allowing Eric Dickerson to be utilized more as the engine of the offense and less as a mule carrying the entire thing on his back. The Rams still had a huge group of doubters as to whether or not they were really legit, and there was good reason for that, because they often played down to terrible teams like the Buccaneers, and even lost to a 1-9 Falcons squad despite their record being 8-1 going into that game. But sometimes being an underdog isn't always a bad thing, because all that doubt arguably led to the highlight of Dieter Brock's career in the NFL with a trip to divisional rival San Francisco in Week 14. The Rams were trying to stave off the Joe Montana-led 49ers for their slight lead on the division in Monday night, and they went into the game as 10-point underdogs despite leading the Niners in the division, which is remarkable in itself. But Brock flipped everyone's expectations yet again, outplaying Joe Cool and marching his Rams to a 27-20 victory, securing the Rams a seed in the playoffs, and eventually closing out their schedule at a more than respectable 11-5. So all of this was already uncharted water for a 30-plus-year-old rookie quarterback, because, I mean, everything is, but now they were set to take on the Cowboys in the divisional round, and the lights were brighter than they had ever been for Brock in the CFL. In his first NFL playoff game, he wasn't anything special or really impressive at any point, but with Eric Dickerson racking up 248 yards on the ground, absolutely no one cares. So after a 20-0 shutout victory, the Rams were in the NFC Championship with Dieter Brock at quarterback. And at this point, it seemed like it was time to start getting some footage for the 30 for 30. But actually not really, because unbeknownst to the Rams, this is the end of the happy part. Los Angeles was just a game away from the Super Bowl, but with who they were matched up against, they probably could have just stayed on the bus. You see, sometimes lackluster teams can score a run to the Super Bowl where their opponents just fade into a blur, but sometimes you play the 1985 Chicago Bears, remembered by many today as the greatest defense in NFL history. It was a frigid January day in the Windy City, but even though Dieter Brock had played in Canada for a decade, Soldier Field wasn't exactly what you would call hospitable. Instead, the Bears held both Eric Dickerson and Dieter Brock to what were essentially their worst performances of their season, with Dickerson only able to manage 46 yards on 17 carries, standing in stark contrast to his almost 250 yards against Dallas just a week earlier. And without the crutch of Dickerson's success on the ground, Brock was left completely exposed, forced to throw for 31 attempts and only completing 10 of them for an anemic 66 yards and a pick. The final nail in the coffin, though, was a sack fumble returned by the Bears for a touchdown with just over 2 minutes remaining, placing the stamp on a dominant 24-0 shutout and yet another confirmed victim of the Chicago 46 defense. It was embarrassing, it was demoralizing, and in an instant, that clobbering undid all of the strange highs that had come on the way to that bloody Sunday. In an instant, the Rams fanbase turned on Brock and blamed all of their failures on him for cracking when he really needed to step up for the team. So naturally, just like those quarterbacks who had come before him, Brock was now as disposable as the rest of the Rams, now set to turn 35 with an ongoing back ailment that would flare up the following preseason. So if it wasn't already a done deal, that issue certainly cemented it, as the Rams traded for a new passer in Jim Everett that offseason, leaving Dieter Brock without a job just a few months after suiting up for a spot to play in the Super Bowl. So just like that, just as quickly as he burst onto the scene in the NFL, deeply confusing everyone that wasn't already a CFL fan, Brock disappeared, and where he went, nobody knows. Well, he actually went into coaching, but the legend of Dieter Brock the passer, the man who could throw a football over a mountain, was forgotten to time. 34-year-old rookie, 11-4 record as a starter in the NFL, and a playoff win after making the jump from Canadian football. All of that vanished from NFL memory just after a single season. But if you ask me, it shouldn't be. Because as bad as Dieter Brock might have been in the playoffs, it's not like you could reasonably expect a man making that kind of transition to casually outplay the 85 Bears in Chicago. And while he probably wasn't rightfully brought back for a second season, I think the man deserves a little bit more respect. One of only 6 rookies to ever even suit up in a conference championship, and one of the best names in pro history, north of the border or otherwise. So Dieter Brock, here's to you and that bizarre run in 1985. May your legacy as a 34-year-old rookie live on forever in the minds of 30-somethings everywhere that still want to believe that they've got a shot in the NFL.